Everybody, it's Mike, and I'm back. I'm ready to do some more deprogramming. Have another class talk about Krishna cults, how you can get out of one if you're in one, and if you don't know anything about them, you can learn a lot about them right here. So I was in the Krishna cult, the Hare Krishna cult, for 20 years. I've been out for about 13 years, and I know all about it. Nobody can tell me anything. These gurus or anything. But anyway, so I'm going to do react to some videos. I'm going to talk about this poisoning of the founder, that whole thing, and then more right after we do this opening. Here we go.
Hello?
Hello.
All right, hey, so thanks for joining in on today's episode of more poison conspiracy bullshit from the Hare Krishnas. So a lot of people are interested in this whole poison thing, and when I was a Hare Krishna, I was definitely on the side that believed that Prabhupada was poisoned. And the main reason I was on that side that I believed that he was poisoned is because I understood that these gurus were full of shit. They were horrible people. Devotees had been shot, banned, beaten, all of that. So why wouldn't they? Why wouldn't they, if they had the chance to kill the founder too? So and there's part of me that still believes that. Like, they're a bunch of fucking crazy ass, violent, crazy people that think they're above the law. They think all these wacky things. They could definitely have killed him, okay, if they wanted to poison him. Now, do I think that they really did poison him? Probably not, because I think they're not smart enough. And I'll go over that. I'm going to talk about the whole thing, because new shit has come to light, okay? Let's see.
Man, I've got certain information, all right? Certain things have come to light, and, you know, has it ever occurred to you that instead of, running around blaming me, given the nature of all this new shit, this could be a lot more complex. I mean, it might not be just such a simple,
Exactly. That's what I'm trying to say. So, and that's what they're trying to say, is they want you to believe all kinds of stuff in order to come to the conclusion that these guys killed Prabhupada, where it really doesn't matter whether they killed him or not. If they did kill him, it's just another reason why you shouldn't be in this cult. Why you should have nothing to do with this cult. If you're in it, you need to get out. If you're not in it, it's just another example of how fucking insane they are. Okay, that they either did or didn't, that there's a whole section of this cult that believes that they did, is insanity. And that anybody would be part of this is insane. And I would say there's probably a 30-70 chance that they did, like a 30% chance that maybe they did do something to get rid of him. You know, 30, 70, 40, 60 chance. I don't think it's 50-50. I don't think it's a 50-50 chance. Although, you know, hey, roll of the dice. But I do think that there is a small percentage chance that these guys did something to get rid of him. But again, I don't think they did because the reason why it's a small percentage that I think is possible is because I don't think they're smart enough. I think they're too stupid. Just like shooting the guy in the van in L.A. Like, the guy really thought he was going to get away with it? Well, he almost did get away with it, but they were just too stupid to pull it off. Why is the guy driving back to, or flying back to Ohio and then Kentucky and then whatever, and then why didn't he just get on a plane in L.A. and go to India like he was supposed to do? Not too smart. So do I think they were smart enough to pull off I don't think so. But anyway, so new shit has come out, and so this guy, I'm going to read a little bit of what he says about this poisoning thing, and he thinks that this makes sense. Okay, he thinks that this makes sense. He says, "Who in 1977 knew about cadmium poisoning?" He says, so his first paragraph, he says right here, multiple forensic studies have established that Srila Prabhupada was lethally poisoned with primarily cadmium for the better part of a year, at the minimum, by some of his own caretakers. Now, that's false. That is not true. Multiple forensic studies have not established that Srila Prabhupada was lethally poisoned with primarily cadmium for the better part of a year, at minimum, by some of his own caretakers. Like, every part of that statement is false. Now, there have been studies that show that he had levels of cadmium or arsenic or whatever in his hair samples that they took, which is not uncommon for people that live in villages in India. They have high levels of arsenic in their well water in some places, and possibly cadmium. So it's not just that alone doesn't establish that he was poisoned. It says, so he says multiple forensic studies have established, false, that Srila Prabhupada was lethally poisoned with primarily cadmium for better part of a year. So if it was primarily cadmium, what was the rest of it? Because you must know what that was. It wasn't. They're just going, hey, he had high levels of cadmium in his hair samples. Okay, so, and then they want to pin it on some of his caretakers. Well, yeah, who else is there? But what evidence is there that you have that any one of his caretakers administered cadmium to him? This is no different than Prabhupada saying, yeah, the superintendent of my building stole my typewriter because he's black, and black people steal. So it was the black guy. There's no logic in that either. But there's no logic in this. Not only is there no logic in it, it's just outright lies. It's not true. It's just not true. It's just not true. It says, in contradiction to scientific proof, inane deniers like the ISKCON GBC protest that this is impossible and ludicrous. Well, I don't say it's impossible or ludicrous. I just don't believe it happened. I believe it's possible that they weren't giving him, first of all, they weren't giving him the medical care he needed, so that's abuse. Was that intentional? Maybe. I don't know. He wasn't getting the medical care that he needed at the last stage of his life for his diabetes or kidney disease or congestive heart failure or whatever he was sick with. Because he's a pure devotee and he's not the body. And what does he need? What does he need health care for? What does he need to go to the hospital for? So they don't even know what he had. They know he had diabetes. They know that they know that he had some old people diseases that you get when you're 77 years old. So it's not ludicrous and impossible, and I don't think anyone's really saying it's ludicrous or impossible. We're just saying where's the evidence for any of these claims? Would it hold up in court? Absolutely not. It wouldn't hold up in court. Could they convict these guys of murder based on there's a level of cadmium in his hair? And they're going, well, there's a level of cadmium in his hair and some arsenic in there. Where else would it come from but these guys? Oh, yes, that makes sense. Guilty. Lock them up. It's ridiculous. It absolutely is ridiculous. Okay, so he says, in contradiction to scientific proof, inane deniers like the ISKCON UEC protest that this is impossible and ludicrous, claiming, one, cadmium was unknown in 1977 as a homicidal poison, and that, two, even today, there are no cadmium poisoning cases on record. Now, that is a good point, and definitely one that that should be brought up in court. If I was being accused of poisoning someone with cadmium in 1977, and a specialist or someone who knows cadmium, expert, testified and said, no, well, cadmium was unknown in 1977. We didn't know it was poisonous. We didn't know anything about it. It was relatively new. And then another murder expert testified and said, there is not one case of cadmium poisoning on record anywhere ever on planet Earth. So the idea that in 1977 someone would say, hey, let's poison them with cadmium is pretty shaky. So so he goes on, he says, both are totally untrue. These people will deny truth and facts until they die. The use of cadmium in Srila Prabhupada's extended lethal poisoning means that someone in Srila Prabhupada's 1977 entourage did know of its lethality and homicidal application. So he's working backwards. He's saying, well, because there was cadmium in his hair, then someone did know. Someone around him know. You gotta go through the front door. You can't say, well, because he had cadmium in his hair, and someone poisoned him, which means someone in his entourage knew about cadmium poisoning, which means someone in his thing, must have gone and bought it from someone, and then they came and they knew how to put it in his food or in how do you even know where to get cadmium to put in? He says, even in 1977, any chemist knew about cadmium's lethal, its suitability as a homicidal poison, and that it causes gastrointestinal symptoms that are common to many ailments. Okay, well, that may or may not be true, that any chemist in 1977 would know about cadmium. I mean, I can't accept that hypothesis. Maybe, maybe not. I don't know enough about cadmium, the history of cadmium, or its applications as poison to just make that statement. And I don't think he does either. And then he says, there were many chemists in and around ISKCON in the 1970s who could have, innocently or not, either way, passed information about heavy metals and cadmium specifically to one or more of the poisoners. So now there's this. You see the insanity of this? Okay, he says, one, forensic studies have placed Tamal Krishna Goswami at the center of the poisoning What forensic studies? He's acting like there was he's trying to paint this picture like the death scene of Prabhupada's room, like a whole Law and Order type CSI, like a whole thing came in and they did a whole investigation and there was a whole forensic thing. That didn't happen. There was nothing like that happen. Dude, we'll never know what really happened. We'll never know what really happened unless you were there, unless you were in that room, unless you were with him 24 hours a day. I don't know how forensic studies would put Tamal Krishna at the center of the poisoning. He was definitely there, and he was an asshole, and he was probably, a pretty shitty person, but does that make him a murderer? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question, but there's no evidence that he did anything. In 1968, he spoke on tape with Srila Prabhupada showing he knew the ways of arsenic poisoning. Yeah, I think a lot of people have heard of arsenic and know that it's a poison, and people can die from arsenic poisoning. I think that's not an uncommon thing for someone to know, especially if they've paid attention in high school, maybe even went to community college and did some college. Knowing that arsenic is a poison is not, it doesn't make you a suspected murderer. And he says, well, Tamal could make the substitution with no need for any special expertise. So he says, one character is Tamal Krishna. He could have done it. Bhakti Charu Swami studied chemistry for 6 years, which was his college study major in India and Germany up to 1976. He was late on the scene, although he is very much implicated as an accessory during and after fact. What implicates him as an accessory during and after the fact? Because he went to college and studied chemistry? Now he's suspected of poisoning? You really got to make some stretches to follow this guy. I mean, if you want to come up and say, hey, he was poisoned and these guys did it, this is all you would have. Otherwise, he would say, we have this evidence that Bhakti Charu did this, Tamal did that. They don't. All he can say is, well, probably he did talk about arsenic at one time in 1968, some 9 years earlier or something. He did show some knowledge of arsenic. Bhakti Charu went to, he studied chemistry. Then he says, Chandra Swami was associated with many New York devotees in 1976, 1977, and he could have given the idea of cadmium or one or more of the poisoners. He could have, or he could not have. We don't even know that he knew anything about cadmium. He's just saying, well, this guy, he was an expert in Ayurvedic medicine, black magic, extortion, bribes, and many dark activities, suspected in murder, poisonings, assassination, bombs, terrorist wars, etc. Was he really? This guy was a devotee? This guy was a Hare Krishna and hanging around the Hare Krishna temple? This guy who was suspected in murder, poisonings, assassinations, bombs, terrorist wars? This guy was a devotee? You want me to believe that? If you want me to believe that, this cult is even crazier than I thought. Chandra Swami was associated with the many devotees, New York devotees in 76, 77, He was an expert in Ayurvedic medicines, black magic, extortion, bribes, dark activities, suspected in murder, poisonings, assassinations, bombs, terrorist wars. This was Chandraswami. And this is a guy who went by the name Chandraswami. And I don't know if he was really an expert in Ayurvedic medicine. What does that even mean? Expert in Ayurvedic medicine, black magic, extortion, bribes. Was he really? Do we even know if that's true? I mean, based on the other things that this guy has said, I don't even know if to believe any of that stuff. That's what I'm saying. Some of this stuff is so crazy, and they are so crazy, that it's crazy to believe it, and then it's crazy to dismiss it. You go, that's too crazy to believe. Well, why? They believe a fucking demon head is eating the moon. The crazy shit they believe in their books makes this stuff totally believable. Totally believable. That's why I'm saying whether they killed him or not, there's no evidence that says that they didn't, but these people, you can't put it past them. You can't put it past them. Look what he's saying about this other guy, and this guy's a Hare Krishna. This is one Hare Krishna talking about another Hare Krishna. This guy sounds like he's, a supervillain from a Mission Impossible movie or a James Bond movie. This Chandraswami, this Hare Krishna guy sounds like a supervillain who's into poisoning and assassination, bombs, terrorist wars. I mean, all kinds of shit going on. This guy's like, Hare Krishna? You think that this makes your cult look good? Proving that this guy was poisoned by these wackos? Like, oh yeah, come join our cult. Don't worry, our founder was killed by a bunch of these wackos, but if you're smart, you'll be able to avoid them, even though you won't know which one's which. But just chant Hare Krishna and be happy. Meanwhile, all this shit's going on. Not only is this shit possible that all this shit went on the way he says it went on, whether it went on or not, they're crazy, and they're crazy enough to believe this shit. I mean, it's crazy whether it's real or not. There's, like I said about the other thing, there's no way you can look at it and go, okay, well, this makes sense. There's no way any of it makes sense. None of it. And he's not even done. He says, apparently the naive and innocent Swarup Damodar Swami was in India and with Srila Prabhupada many times in 77. He was a PhD in organic chemistry and certainly knew about chemistry. It's like they're just looking for people that could be suspicious. Like, well, who else? Oh, this guy. So it's literally the guy on the thumbnail trying to put this picture together with all the strings and the photos and the names. And this goes over here, and then this guy did this. And all to prove that the Hare Krishnas are a fucking violent-ass, crazy-ass cult that will not only kill you, but they'll kill their founder. Because if they'll kill their founder, they got no problem fucking with you. It's like they told me, well, we'll come down there to LA, we'll meet you in front of the temple, and we'll take care of this man to man in front of the temple. What the fuck is that? They don't have a problem. They don't have a problem beating people up, abusing their children, abusing their women, abusing their critics and people that leave. They don't have a problem with that at all. And if they don't have a problem with that, they don't have a problem with you either. So when they come along and they start fucking with you, and you go and you try to like defend yourself or do something about it, then you become the enemy. And then that's when everything fucking crashes, and you're gonna go through fucking some hard times realizing this is all a bunch of bullshit. I'm trying to tell you, man. This guy's just looking for people that I can blame. He says the Sarup Damodar saw him. Well, apparently he was naive and innocent, but he was there and he could have done this and he could have done that. He says, he goes on and on about cadmium and poisoning, cadmium this and that. It's insanity. It's the insanity. He says cadmium is not commonly used as a poisoning agent in societal homicides, unlike arsenic, and most cadmium poisoning studies focus on hazardous occupational or environmentally contaminated situations, such as factory pollution in Poland. Yet, he wants you to believe that these Hare Krishnas somehow figured out that cadmium would be a great way to poison the founder, and it was only going to take a year. Because he was administered cadmium for a year. So obviously they wanted to poison him, but they were in no hurry. There was no hurry. Look, hey, we got a lot of time. Okay, we're going to give him a little bit of cadmium every day. We're going to put it in his prasadam, and in about a year from now, he's going to be so sick, he's going to die. So there's no hurry. We want to poison him, get him out of here. It's just going to take a while, because we could use something that poisons him quicker. We could just kill him. I mean, we could just, but no, we're gonna do it like we're gonna take it out. We're gonna take a year to do it. Okay, we're just gonna let it go on and on and on. It makes no sense. So they're gonna do it take like a whole year of them to get caught. Like, it's going to take a year, so that means that there's a whole year for them to get onto you. Like, he's get stuck, and they evidently they did, right? Evidently they did. They figured it out. I mean, it doesn't make sense. It just does not make sense. Good, hot, and humid, blazing, fiery afternoon. Yes, it is. Oh my goodness, I am burning up where I am. It is incredibly hot, and so. Yeah, it's a blazer. So that's this poison issue. It doesn't make sense. If they didn't poison him, it just means that you got a whole segment of these Hare Krishnas that believe in these wacky conspiracy theories, and they'll believe anything. They'll believe anything, and to the point where they want to believe that he was poisoned so bad they think that it's going to help their point and help make new devotees. Like, hey, we poisoned the leader, but don't worry about that. You come in now and you can join, and everything's going to be okay. Even though we're really upset that we poisoned him, there's nothing we can do about that. So that's I don't know what the point of it all is. It makes no sense at all, but that's what's going on, and I wanted to talk about it. And so that's me talking about it. It makes no sense. And like I said, do I believe it's possible that they poisoned him? Yes, it's possible. Do I think they did it? No. I think they're too stupid to figure out how to do that. And why would they poison him and have it take a year? And why cadmium? I mean, none of it makes sense. None of it makes sense. But anyway, what does make sense in the Hare Krishnas? Okay, that's my other point. What does make sense? Nothing. Nothing makes sense. Nothing makes sense in the Hare Krishnas. And I'm going to show you a video, and I'm going to talk about this video. Let me see, which one is it? Okay. So this is interesting. I thought this was interesting. You can see one of these brainwashed Hare Krishnas in action, repeating the terminology that they use, using the imagery that they use, using everything, and that's why it's a cult. You can meet somebody and you can talk to them for like an hour, And you won't even know what religion they are or if they are a religious person or not, because they just talk like a normal person. They just talk like a normal person. But if you meet someone in a cult, they have their whole different way of talking. They have their own definition for words. They use words differently. They use different word combinations, different syntax, different grammar. It's a whole cult speak. Scientologists have it, and Hare Krishnas have it. And even though they're speaking English, you can immediately identify that they're out there. And this lady is no different. And let me see, here we go. Let me, before I do that, let me see here. Okay, here we go.
I was talking to this Indian life member who had just asked, was explaining about her life and how she had a very nice life, very much the love of goodness. I believe she was a nurse. And Prabhupada explained that material world was like a boil, and that it doesn't do much good to just blow on the boil, that it isn't going to make the boil go away, isn't going to cure the boil needs to be lanced. And so similarly, that we need to get to the root of the problem and chant Hare Krishna and get out of this material world and lance, our material desires. So he was very, very, very heavy, but expert at preaching.
So she thinks that's expert preaching. That Prabhupada did not understand life. He thought that life was like a boil, right? It was life to Prabhupada was like a boil, right? He could not understand how anyone could enjoy life. And I don't know where that comes from, his upbringing, the teachings, his cult teachings. But he didn't believe that a man and a woman could fall in love, that there could be a relationship, that parenting was important for children or for a parent to love their child. He didn't believe that there was any reason to have a family or that there should be any attachment to your family. He didn't believe in any of that. He didn't believe in marriage, except if you failed at being a brahmachari and a sannyasi, well, then you could take a wife. He didn't believe that women had anything worthwhile other than caring for children, sewing clothes, washing clothes, I guess, maybe cooking some, so this is the way he looked at life, and then he has the nerve to say material life is like a boil, and blowing on a boil doesn't do any good. You have to lance it. Similarly, she says similarly, like life is just like a boil. No, your metaphor, your analogy doesn't work. It's not a good analogy, and so then you want to blame life. You want to compare life to a boil that has to be lanced. Prabhupada was indeed great at giving shitty advices. I mean, so he's saying, so in this lecture, whatever he's saying, in her mind, great preaching is Prabhupada's saying that life, material life, like there's something else other than this material life, like there's something other than just life. There is nothing else. You can tell me there's something else, but there's this life. There's this life. And Prabhupada wants to convince you and me and everyone that this life is like a boil. It's a big, painful, pus-filled, disgusting sore that needs to be lanced and drained and become a wound that needs to heal. This is his view of life. And she's sitting there going, this is great preaching. He could be so expert at that. Like what? Like at what? He told me that life is like a big, stinky, pus-filled boil that needs to be lanced. And you want me to treat him like he's Socrates or Plato or Aristotle or Pythagoras or something? What the fuck? Because he can't understand life? He can't understand how to enjoy it? Because his wife was 11 when he was 22 years old and he couldn't form a loving relationship with that little girl that he raped? So he doesn't understand marriage. He doesn't understand how a man and a woman can fall in love because he was forced. He had an arranged marriage when he was 22 and his wife was 11. So you want me to believe that he was a virgin when he was 22 and had sex with his 11-year-old little girl wife? He was a virgin? He was a 22-year-old virgin? I don't know. But that's what I'm supposed to infer, is that he was a 22-year-old virgin, she was an 11-year-old virgin, and somehow that makes him a pure devotee. And he didn't love her, and she didn't love him, and he's going to give advice, any kind of advice about life, about marriage, about the world, about how we should act or anything, what's good and bad or whatever. This man who had sex with an 11-year-old girl and then says, I didn't even love her. You couldn't even do what you're supposed to do and care for this girl like you say you're supposed to? In your stupid scriptures and your stupid philosophy that says grown man marries an 11-year-old girl and then takes care of her and she falls in love with him and he falls in love with her and blah, 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 blah. That didn't work out for you? Mr. Pure Devotee? Mr. Pure Devotee who couldn't work his magic on an 11-year-old girl? Couldn't work your magic on an 11-year-old girl? But you come to America and you can work your magic on all these fucking degenerate hippies, like Kirtanananda and Hayagriva and whoever else, Bhavananda. That you can do. That you could do. Those are the kind of people that Prabhupada attracted. You're disgusting. It's disgusting fuck. She's going to sit there and talk about how great he was. What's so great about that? Prabhupada said that life was like a boil, like a big stinky boil on your ass, and you need to pop it. What the fuck? Next thing you're going to be telling me Ramananda Roy was able to touch little girls' privates because he was so fucking... Oh wait, you already told me that. Oh, sorry. I'm. He already said that one. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay, so I've been wanting to check this guy out because it just seems like it's going to be another idiot talking. Anytime I see the word science in there, I just got to go, oh my God, not another one of these guys. And this video is old. This video has been around, but it doesn't matter because nothing changes. So who cares? But anyway, I just wanted to see this guy. He looks like a real winner. He looks like a real brainwashed friggin'. But it's 16 years ago. He might not even be a Hare Krishna anymore. He could have come to his senses and left and said, "Hey, I'm done with this bullshit." But I doubt it. I don't know. Let's see. Let me see what's going on with this guy.
Haribol, I'm Sitapati, and I want to talk a little bit now about science, and kind of from an apologetic, in terms of the formal meaning of apologetics, explaining a faith tradition in terms of the people outside the tradition. I want to look at science a little bit. Science is basically a form of Sankhya. It's a form of analyzing the material world and dividing up the different elements there. And science works, as evidenced by the fact that you're watching this right now. It's by science that we have a thing like a digital video camera, a memory card, a computer, the internet, screens, LCDs. These are all products of science and technology, and that Sankhya of dividing the world up in that way. So yes, science works. as far as it goes. It's not. I don't think it's really valid to say that science doesn't work, because it obviously does, clearly. But at the same time, science is limited in what it deals with. It deals with the physical elements of the universe. And there's more at work in the universe than simply the physical elements, because there's also...
Okay, so science doesn't claim to go into these other areas like spirituality. That's not the area of science. Science is definitely the material world and how it works and its relationship. So when he says there's more to, what more is there? Let's see what he's saying. Science doesn't claim to be any more than just science.
Conscious experience and life, which are things that the material science can't deal with. It doesn't have any, it really doesn't have anything to say about them.
Well, that's not true. Science has a lot to say about consciousness and life. He doesn't want to hear what it has to say about consciousness and life because it goes against what he believes, which is that life comes into life and it started from Krishna playing the flute and then goes into the ear of the four-headed guy, and then that grows on the flower that sticks out there, and then Lord Brahma creates the material world, and he creates everything in it and all that, and he believes this type of thing.
It doesn't have any, it really doesn't have anything to say about those things. It's outside its purview, and that's more of a metaphysical area, and that's where Krishna consciousness...
So all of these things that he's talking about, first of all, science does explain a lot of things about consciousness and life. It can explain how the sperm and the egg come together in different species and in human species and other species. It can explain how the embryo, the cell, the zygote multiplies and then grows in the womb of the mother, and how it gestates and then eventually is born. It has a lot to say about that. It has a lot to say about consciousness. It has a lot to say about the brain. It has a lot to say about brain activity. It has a lot to say about, it knows a lot about the brain activity. It knows what areas of the brain control different thoughts and processes in your mind. So that if your one portion of your brain is damaged or harmed in certain areas, it can affect certain parts of your body. And science knows that. Okay, so science has a lot to say about consciousness. It has a lot to say about when someone goes into a coma, or when someone goes into different states of minds. It has a lot to say as far as, it might not have all the answers, but it has a lot to say. And it is not out the purview of science. It's just that when you want to get into the spiritual aspect of these topics, science says, I'm not interested in your mythology and your pseudoscience, like chanting Hare Krishna makes you happy, or chanting Hare Krishna alleviates your karma, or taking a bath in the Ganges releases all your karma. Science is not going to argue with you about your karma being washed away by the waves of the Ganges, or whether chanting Hare Krishna is going to put you in a different state of mind, because a lot of things can put you in a different state of mind. So right off the bat, again, just like the other guy in the letter, when he starts off and he says, hey, these forensic studies prove this, that, and the other. No, they don't. Same thing with this guy. Science doesn't claim to have all the answers. Science doesn't claim... Science is not silent on all these issues about consciousness and life and different things like that. It might not have all the answers that you want to, that satisfy you. But science has a lot to say about these things. It has a lot to say about things as far as, let's say, like ghosts. Science says there are no ghosts, that there are no spiritual beings that can interact with our material world and move things around and cause things to happen. So science does have things to say about spiritual topics and spiritual things related to the material world. You ask a scientist and say, are there ghosts, beings of people that have passed away, ghosts that come, and can they, move my TV across the floor? Or, move my couch move my couch and rearrange my furniture? Is there a ghost that do that? Scientists are going to say, no, we have no evidence of that ever happening. Now, are there videotapes of things happening that we can't explain? And we go, well, maybe it was manipulated on camera, or maybe it was, the hand is quicker than the eye, or we just don't know what we don't know. Yeah, there's plenty of those things. Does it mean that there's that those things prove? Again, does that mean that they're proved? We have undisputable proof that ghosts exist. We have undisputable proof that this or that happened. No, we don't.
And that's the strength of Krishna, the contribution of Krishna consciousness is in the area of consciousness, the area of meaning to things. Meaning means why. So Krishna consciousness and metaphysics can answer the question of why, whereas science...
No. Krishna consciousness doesn't answer the questions of why. Krishna consciousness doesn't answer any questions at all. None of the questions that he wants you to think it answers. It doesn't answer any questions at all. Let's back this up just a second here.
Why? So Krishna consciousness and metaphysics, the area of meaning to things. Meaning means why. So Krishna consciousness and metaphysics can answer the question of why, whereas science addresses the question of how. So science can explain how the planets are, to a certain degree, how the planets are orbiting the Earth or the Sun, how the planets are orbiting the Sun, and so based on that, how they can make predictions of things like solar eclipses and precession of the stars, and they can check those observations and see that they're valid and that they actually work. There's something for you to eat down there. And so in that way it works and it shows how, but it can't answer the question of why. Why do things happen like that? Another example is the difference between how the sky is blue and why the...
Well, he can't explain why either. He can only repeat what Prabhupada says in his books, and Prabhupada says, well, the sky is blue because Krishna is blue, or this happens because Krishna wills it to happen. He's got no answer for anything. Absolutely no answer for anything. Spiritual world, Prabhu. Yeah. So he's already mentioned the spiritual world and pseudoscience. Pseudoscience, Prabhu. Completely. If they could only hear themselves speak, like if I was trying to convince him of something, and I was talking the way he's talking, he'd be like, "You're out of your mind." And that's how they are. And for all you Hare Krishnas out there that are watching, you really got to. It's hard. I know you can't because you're so brainwashed to think like him. It's like it's literally impossible for you to think the way that I'm thinking and the people in my chat are thinking. I know it's literally impossible for you to think like a normal human being. And that's why I'm doing this. So you can see that maybe at some point you can see the folly in what he's saying. How ridiculous it is.
Blue. We can answer the question with science of how the sky is blue by talking about refraction of light and how the light rays hit the refractive index of the different mediums that they travel through and how that changes the light to blue, but it doesn't answer the question of why.
Yes, it does. You just answered the question of why. Why is the sky blue? Because the light is coming through and it's refracting through the different elements that are in the atmosphere, which absorb the other colors of light and refract the blue light into our eyeballs. That's why. It's the why and it's the how in the same answer. It is the why. You want to say, well, no, what's the cause? Well, the cause is the light refracting through the atmosphere, and the blue light particles hitting our eyeballs. That's why it's blue. You just explain the why. He wants to say, no, I explain the how. No, you explain the why. Why is the sky blue? Because the light is refracting the blue particles of the spectrum and absorbing the other colors of the spectrum. That's why. That is why. How is it doing that? How is the sky turning blue? Well, we can actually get into it and explain how the photons from the sun are traveling on a certain wavelength, and when they hit that particle, that ice particle or whatever particle is floating in the sky, and the light, through Newton's law, it shows you how the light is refracted, just like the cover of a Pink Floyd album. And then, but instead of all the colors coming out of that prism, just the blue portion is coming out, and that's what we see. That's the how. When the light hits that particle in the sky, and it's refracted through Newton's law. And if you want to know how, even more detail, you got to read Isaac Newton. You got to read his book, and he explains to you how the light, as it's traveling at a certain wavelength, hits that prism, and what happens to it, and how it reacts. That Isaac Newton, that's why we know his name. He figured that out. He figured out the how and the why. You just want to use your fairy tale and say, well, it's because Krishna says this or that, or because...
So metaphysics answers the questions of why, which are very important questions for human beings, because we're conscious living beings, and significance and meaning are very central to our lives. So both of them are there, and they both have some validity. I think an analog between...
No, they don't have some... Your scriptural explanations for why the sky is blue has no validity at all. It just has none. Hey, Mike, what are you saying here? Thanks. First time catching live stream. Thanks for the hard work you do and the courage you show. Hey, it's my pleasure, man. My pleasure. I'm glad you're enjoying it. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're watching it. I'm glad you caught a live one. If you have any questions at all, just let me know. Please, everybody, please hit the like button, like, share, and subscribe button, please. Let's get some more of this. Let's get some more of this nut and what he has to say.
Modern science, and something that we find in the Vedic context is the Vedic Sankhya of Kapila Dev. And there are actually two Vedic Sankhyas of Kapila Dev. There's the one which is called that of Kapila the atheist, and then there's the other which is called that of Kapila Devahuti Putra, the son of Devahuti. And the difference between them is that the Sankhya, the atheistic Sankhya, has 25 elements in it, 25 material elements that it analyzes the world in.
So here's what he's saying, basically. If you really want to know science, you have to read this book that was written about 1,000 years ago. Although we claim it's 5,000 years ago, it was actually written about 1,000 years ago, somewhere around 1,000 years ago, give or take a few hundred years or so. 1,000 years ago, but pinpointing into 1,000 is pretty good. But anyway, he's saying if you really want to know about science, you need to read this book that was written 1,000 years ago. I mean, this is really it really knows what science is. It's the science of Kapila Dev and the teachings of Devahuti and the teachings of Lord Kapila Dev. You need to read these books, which will teach you real science. What a friggin' nut! You got to be out of your friggin' mind. I mean, seriously. He starts off by going, hey, you're watching a computer, and we have the internet, and we have digital cameras, and we've got computers and science. And then he's like, yeah, but, you really need to read these books from 1,000 years ago, because that's where you're really going to get your knowledge from. Again, if he could only hear himself, he thinks he's so smug and thinking that he knows so much because he's read Prabhupada's books. What else has he read? Prabhupada's books. That's it. That's all he knows. That's all he knows. And he feels like he can get up here and he's gonna lecture us about science and scriptures and the teachings of Lord Kapila Dev and the teachings of Devahuti. He really thinks that.
And by analyzing the world in terms of different elements, you can make predictions, you can make inferences, you can do things based on that. So just like the atheistic Sankhya of Kapila, the atheist, we have modern science which analyzes the world in purely physical elements, and you can make predictions, you can make technologies and things, genetic engineering, electronics, all these things are based on this Sankhya, this analysis. And then there's the Sankhya of Kapila Dev, son of Devahuti, which has the same 25 elements, and it also has the 26th element, the soul, and sometimes it is said the 27th element, the super soul. So in the same way, I think we could find a harmony between science and the metaphysics.
Well, first of all, those two extra elements, soul and super soul, is where's the evidence for that? Where's the evidence for that? How can it be science if you don't have any evidence for it? He wants you to believe that believing in his fairy tale is actually science. It's just I can't stress that enough. How they want to stress their fairy tales over real science that we're actually using in the here and now. In the here and now, we're actually watching him on the internet with digital cameras, with optic fibers and all kinds of technology that goes into the microphones and the transmitters and the Wi-Fi box and the undersea cables and all the technology just to create that. The technology just to create the optic fiber and the undersea cable and the ship to take the cable, to put the cable under, and on all of that stuff. That's incredible. That's incredible technology that he's using to sit there and go, well, there's that ain't got it. That ain't enough. What do you say? Sankhya wisdoms of Swiss cheese. Now let me tell you the Sankhya element of space babble. It is such. It is. Let me say. Wait. Let me do this. Here we go.
Consciousness, in terms of understanding science as a Sankhya of the universe, and that there is an atheistic science and there's a theistic science, which also includes knowledge of the soul and the super soul. And that's where I think our great contribution to the modern civilization and society lies, is in building that harmonious system.
No, the idea of a soul and a super soul is not scientific. And you're claiming that it's science coming from, because a 1,000-year-old book says that it's the 26th and 27th, whatever you're claiming, doesn't make it so. It just proves the folly of your book, is what it does. It just reinforces the idea that your book is irrelevant. Your book is irrelevant, and believe me, I've read these books, and they're totally, don't waste your time. It's teachings of Lord Kapila Dev and the teachings of Devahuti. Don't waste your time.
Takes that Sankhya and makes it theistic. And I've spoken on this, I've written articles about it, that atheistic science actually arises as a reaction against religious fundamentalism, where people try to use religion as a means of controlling society, and then science is utilized as a philosophy to break that control of religion over society.
All I can say is no one wants to control society more than Srila Prabhupada through his books. If anyone wants to control everyone's movements, everyone's thoughts, everyone's actions, what they eat, what they say, what they do, what they read, where they go, what everything, it's Srila Prabhupada. He wants to have complete and total control over everything. And that's just crazy to hear him talk like this.
So when religious institutions react by trying to make science out to be something evil or incorrect, then the natural response of people, people who don't want to fall under that oppressive regime is that they make science more atheistic and they argue strongly against the metaphysic. Because the adherents of a metaphysical system are now trying to say that, the Sankhya is invalid or it's evil or something like that. Whereas science is not evil, it's just a way of analyzing the universe, and it does work, which is evidenced by the fact that I'm speaking this and you're listening to it now. That's evidence that science does work. Of course, there are other things like medical science, for example. The problem with modern medicine is not so much science, but more that modern medicine is a mixture of economics and science, and it's that economic influence which mutates the scientific method. If you read that book, Forbidden Archaeology, by Michael Cremo and Richard Tyson, the actual accusation that they're making against archaeology is one that basically that it's not following the formal scientific method. And in medical science, they don't follow the formal scientific method. They will discard observations that they should.
All right, I'm done with this guy because I'm I can't take his blathering bullshit. I can't take it anymore. I can't take it anymore. Let me see. But I do want to show. Oh, let me see. What do you say? Super prove it via mathematics, physics, and chemistry. Yeah, it's interesting how he wants to say, look, the science is real and it works because you're watching me on this TV, and you watch me on this computer, and we have video and all this stuff, and then he's turning right around and saying, well, you gotta believe in these imaginary things too, because that's really where it's at. Is this well? You haven't explained anything. You're just blathering and going on and talking in circles, and it's just a bunch of.
What in God's holy name are you blathering about?
That's the truth. That is really the truth. But this guy is really good. This is Gora. He was a Hare Krishna like me, and he is no longer. And he's got a little story, and I always like to hear from him. It's encouraging. I like to hear what he's got to say. He doesn't do his videos anymore. He's moved on doing other stuff now. But you can go check him out. Check out his channel if you want to see more of his videos. And I'm going to show a little bit of this video right here. Let's see.
Wow, 2019. So that means it is going to be 4 years in the near future for me since leaving ISKCON. So I thought New Year. Been a while, maybe good time to do some reflecting. So it's been about 4 years since I've left Krishna consciousness completely. Not quite. I don't know the exact date. I guess I could probably look it up, maybe somehow figure it out. I'd have written something around that time. Anyways, this winterish, maybe in the next couple months would be my 4-year anniversary of officially leaving ISKCON, deciding I was an atheist. Later that year, my ex-wife and I also decided to end our marriage, and in a month it would be 3 years from her moving out and us living separately. So I think I was 34, if that makes sense, at the time. And yeah, that was the first time in my adult life that I'd really lived alone, which is kind of crazy, because I basically joined full-time when I was 18. I lived with my parents for a couple years. I was going to college, so I wasn't living in temples the entirety of that time. It's from when I was 18 onwards. I went to India, lived in Radhanath Swami's temple for a year, came back. Lived with my parents and lived in Alachua with a friend, Alachua, Florida, with a friend there for some time. So There was a couple years where I lived in Alachua, Florida, where I wasn't like living in a temple, and some transition times where I was like kind of traveling and stuff, where I wasn't like connected to one temple specifically. But essentially, I joined full time when I was 18, and I never had a chance to live alone. So yeah, it's been really a process that, of course, started to happen with, when I left the temple full-time, decided to get married at like 27, and, through the marriage, trying to figure out who I was, decided to go back to graduate school even before I left the temple, so graduate school in philosophy. So, but, I think in a lot of ways that process didn't begin truly, or final stage. I couldn't really truly begin until I was living on my own. So the past few years I've been doing that, which has been amazing. Here's my house. I love living on my own. Oh yeah, there's some old friends over there. My desk down there. Yeah, got some. Anyhow, I love my little apartment here that I've been living at for a couple years now. So yeah, I've been living on my own. Been dating. And just trying to, figure out things. It's funny, the things you learn about yourself that you might not have realized. I struggled a lot living in temples. I would just feel exhausted every day. I had so much trouble, doing anything after the morning program. And I thought it was physical because I do have trouble sleeping, so I know that I slept less than everyone around me. So I thought that was the issue. And there was maybe some truth to that. But the real reason why I would feel like crawling into my sleeping bag every morning after the morning program was that was literally I now know that was literally the worst possible day for me. Or the worst possible way for me to start my day. To keep things very simple, I can say I'm extremely introverted, although I think that's an oversimplification, probably has more to do with sort of sensory processing, I process sensory information, that much people, not much noise, it's just way too much for my nervous system and my brain to handle, so I would be essentially done by the end of the morning program, waking up in a group of people, doing everything with them for the next 5-6 hours, eating breakfast with them, that was all just, my body, my brain, my nervous system was just completely done after that. Anyways, the things you learn when you have a chance to figure things out on your own and live by yourself. I now know that I need a lot of time alone, and that suits me well. And even just teaching a couple classes, lecturing, I now teach. Just
So, where'd I go? Here I am. So, he talks about how what it was like, leaving the Hare Krishnas, and he talks about what it was like when he was in the Hare Krishnas, and I never lived in an ashram, so I never lived in that that communal, a bunch of people in a room, a bunch of guys in a room, sleeping in a sleeping bag, and they're all getting up at the same time and taking a shower and then going to the temple and doing all that. And I was on my own. I had my own place, and I did that all on my own. Got up, I went to the temple. If I wanted to get up and go to the temple, I got up and went to the temple for Mangal Artik and the morning program. I didn't have breakfast. Sometimes I'd go have breakfast at the temple, but they didn't really want people going, which I thought was weird. I thought we were all devotees and you could go, after the whole morning program, all the devotees are going and having breakfast, which is just it's not like breakfast, It's some fruit and some yogurt maybe and some sweet rice. That was it, Maybe, maybe a banana. I don't know. But it was breakfast, and I used to like to go. I would go, even though I wasn't living in the ashram. I would go, and for a while they would let some of us go that weren't living in there. And then one day they came and they said, no, you can't go. It's only for, you got to live here. And I was like, well, I work here. And they were like, no, you can't because you don't live here. And so that was, and then I didn't go, and then I would go to work. I'd go to my job. So I didn't go on Sankirtan or go out and book distribution or do some service at the temple. I went to my job. I went to my job. And then in the afternoon, I came home from work, hang out for a couple hours, and I'd head over to the temple, maybe go to the restaurant, hang out, talk with some friends, maybe catch up on some chanting I didn't do, I still needed to do, and then go for the evening program, and then bounce out. And that was my time at the temple. So I didn't have the experience that he did, where he didn't have free time. He didn't have, maybe your personality is, personality type is you need some free time to yourself to get your head straight, just during the day. You need a couple hours where and you don't get that in the Hare Krishna. It's like you're constantly, he said, I didn't know what it was like to live by myself until, he's 20-something years old. He joined when he grew up in the Hare Krishnas. And then he got a guru when he was 18, but he'd already grown up in it. His parents are devotees, so he already grew up in it. And then at 18, he got a guru and joined the ashram, whatever, and started to do. That sounds like a nightmare to me. That sounds like a nightmare to me. So after so many years of living like that, then he left. And then he got into he's got his own place, he's got having a girlfriend or a relationship, he's dating, whatever he's doing. And that was all new to him, at an older age, because when he was younger, he wasn't doing that. When I was 14, 15, that's when I started hanging out with girls, and girls in the clique, and maybe going to a girl's house after school, something like that. And then 16, driving, going on dates, dating girls, going out, going to the movies, having a girlfriend in high school, and then out of high school, having a couple girlfriends, and then getting married. So he didn't have any of that. So when he was growing up, he was a Hare Krishna kid. So he didn't have any relation. He didn't have no girlfriends. He wasn't chasing no girls around. And then he went right into the ashram, and then he lived in the ashram, and then he got into working for some swami or something. He did his thing. So he didn't really have any, I don't know if he had a girlfriend in the Hare Krishnas. Having a Hare Krishna girlfriend, that's different than having just being in a relationship, not as a Hare Krishna. So he, it took some adjusting for him. And even though for me, I didn't grow up in that, and I didn't have the same experience that he did, I still had to adjust, because it was still enough. It was still enough brainwashing and indoctrination and repetition and all of these things that when you break away, it's a shock. It can be a shock. His whole family, his parents are devotees, his family's devotees, so him leaving that's a whole nother thing. He's got no family to go back to if his family's in the cult. He's in the cult and his family's in the cult. Now he's trying to get out of the cult, but his family's still in it, so I don't know. That's a whole nother thing. That's a whole nother issue. I didn't have that. I didn't have that either. So we had extremely different experiences in this cult, but we both ended up at the same finish line, with pretty much the same conclusions, philosophically and spiritually, pretty much the same conclusions. So I recommend you can go catch Gora Raider. He's got a lot of videos about the Hare Krishnas, very similar to the ones that I'm doing. He talks about a lot of the same things. And like I said, he's got a different take, different experience on the whole thing. But it's great if you're in the cult. Check him out if you're in the cult. If you're out of the cult, you can check him out as well, because I'm sure it's interesting to you to hear from others that have a similar experience that we've had. So I highly recommend what he's done. You had mentioned in a previous video about Bali Maharaj supposedly having 4 billion disciples or whatever. A disciple of Prabhupada finally asked, where did they pass stool? This person was seen as a demon in the movement. Do you know who that was? They left the movement early on. Okay, so that whole conversation is in the Veda base. So you can go to this Veda base here, and you can, let me see. You go to this Veda base, it's vedabase.com, and you just type in Bali Maharaj. You type in Bali Maharaj and hit the search thing, and then it all comes up. And then you have to go through here, and what you got to do is you got to look at the conversation. So you're going to go, you would scroll down to, it's a room conversation that he had. So he says, it's a conversation. I know that conversation. I was actually quoting from that conversation. It's a room conversation. I really like that conversation, because not only are they talking about Bali Maharaj, but when Prabhupada tells them that, you know, you have to accept what I'm saying, I wish I could find this room card. He says, let me see. In the same conversation, I'll tell you in just a second. Let me see. Bali Maharaj. So let me see if I can find it real quick, because this is a very interesting conversation. I've talked about it before in an earlier video almost a year ago. The same conversation, they bring up so they basically, let me explain this. Let me get on camera here and explain what this is. So basically what happens in this conversation is they come to Prabhupada and they ask him about Bali Maharaj and how did he have 4,000 servants, and if they did, where did they pass stool, and how did they whatever. And Prabhupada gets kind of pissed on him, and he says, hey, I'm not explaining it to you. You either, you know, there's a back and forth where Prabhupada says, I'm not going to explain it to you, and they press Prabhupada on it, and Prabhupada pushes back, and then they push back, and he pushes back. And so finally Prabhupada tells him, he goes, look, Prabhupada gets pissed, and he says, look, better you just leave. And they go, no, we don't want to leave. We just want to know. And he goes, well, I'm telling you, and I think that you should just leave and don't be devotees. Just go away. Basically, he's just like, just go. And they go, no, we don't want to go. We want to know that we want to know. And he says, he says, we asked these other devotees and they couldn't tell us, so we're asking you. Prabhupada says, why are you asking me? Why are you bothering me? And they say, well, look, because we asked these other devotees and they couldn't explain it, so we want to ask you. We're asking you. And Prabhupada says, well, if they couldn't explain it, then I can't explain it. And then they say, well, well, why not? And he says, because I've explained it to them, and if they can't explain it to you, then I can't explain it to you. And you have to accept what they say. And if they say that, and if they say that, then that's it. Then you have to accept what they say. And they're like, what do you mean we have to accept what they say? You know, who are they? Who's he? And he says, Prabhupada says, well, they're my representative. So whatever they say is the same as hearing. Whatever you hear from them is the same as hearing from me. That's what Prabhupada says. Okay. So I don't know if any of you heard this conversation or you know what I'm talking about. So basically, Prabhupada says, whatever they say to you is the same as, I wish I had the conversation here. I'll find it one day. I've already gone over it. They say, Prabhupada says, whatever they say is the same as it coming from me, because they are my representative. So if they say this, then that's like the same as me saying it. And then one of them stands up and says, so when he asked me to suck his dick, I'm supposed to suck his dick? And Prabhupada's like, what? And then he goes, yeah, he said he wanted to have sex with me, and he wanted to suck my dick, or he wanted to suck my dick. So was that coming from you? And Prabhupada was like, hold on, wait a minute. And then the whole thing gets kind of haywire after that. But basically they set Prabhupada up because they knew, basically they wanted to call him out because the guy wanted to suck his dick. And I guess he was like, he didn't like that. I'll find it. I'll find it one day. I'll find it one day. Let me see. I don't know how I'm supposed to find it. It's not. There's a way to just search for just the conversations, but I don't know how to. Right now, I'm not able to figure out how to get that. But if you can find it, it's a great conversation. It's a great conversation. You can use the database to research that and look that up. And that conversation, that really caught Prabhupada off guard. Probably did not know what was going on. He was not ready for that. It's all documented in the conversation. You can read it for yourself. Those of you that have never heard this before and you're like, oh my God, Mike, you're fucking out of your mind. No, I'm not. It's in the conversations, and you can read it for yourself, and you'll read it and you'll go, wow, Mike was right. That's really something. So yeah, I think I'm gonna leave it there. That's I'm gonna leave it there. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna look for that conversation. I know I went over it in a previous video, but I'm gonna look for that conversation so I can just have it handy, because it is pretty funny. It is pretty funny. Pretty funny conversation. So maybe I'll do a whole show just about that. Just about that. But let me see. That's that's all I have for you today. Wow, time flies. It's already been 90 minutes. So I want to thank everybody for joining in today. Please hit the like, share, and subscribe buttons. I want to thank everybody for hitting those buttons in advance. But really, my views and everything is getting up there, so I know my videos are getting out there. More and more people are seeing them, and so I want to thank you all for that. And please, everybody, please have a great day, great night, great morning, great afternoon, and have some great luck. And please stay out of a cult. And just for the fun of it, here you can see some pictures of me when I was a Hare Krishna. Everybody, here you go.